guys, big news yesterday, as we discussed in the morning. Didn't make much sense to some ears and eyes for the president to be going after Jerome Powell and saying he'd fire him, and that the tensions with China were causing the markets to live on the fainting couch. Markets soared yesterday after Scott Bessent, Caroline Levitt, and the president all said the China trade war was not going to be so bad. And the president, in tone and substance, backed off 180 degrees as if it had never happened on saying that he was interested in firing Chairman Powell. So, Sean, what are the lessons going forward for those two changes from the administration yesterday?
Well, I think one, they recognize the stability that Jerome Powell brings to the market. Number two, obviously, the consternation that exists with respect to China and our domestic, economic needs. So I think both of those had a reality. He was very clear, as I said before. I think it was a PR thing. He needed Powell to be the straw man. And yesterday he realized that, there's some stability that comes with that. So I think, he does what he does. He made an issue of it and then, kind of is going to shift focus.
Dan, what are the lessons?
He knows when to hold them. He knows when to fold them. I think
Kenny Rogers of you.
Yes, exactly. Look, I think there was two things. I think one, the markets kept speaking. We talked about the bond market, the dollar, gold, etc. I also don't want to not mention that Axios is reporting that the heads of Target, Walmart, Costco, and I forget who else went to see the president last week and said to him, in the next 2 weeks or so, we are going to have to start raising prices and our shelves are going to start to empty because they are having trouble getting some stuff over here and having supply chain issues. And I think he realized, look, Sean, you always say he listens. And I think he realized this is totally spiraled out of control. Like it is going to become even more painfully obvious that we do not have the leverage that he is bragging that we have. And so I think smartly, he's getting out of it. Now, the question I think is, how does he declare victory? Like, what is it's not going to be what they talked about. We've gone from reciprocal tariffs are on. No, wait, they're actually off. It's all about China. Wait a second. Actually, we're going to cool this down. That this actually is untenable. So, I mean, the big picture, it was a failure. The question is just, how does he define victory and get out?
So, Dan, you put your finger on something that my reporting says is very key, not just that one meeting of the major corporate retailers, but business executives in the real world economy. Scott Bessent and Susie Wiles spend an enormous amount of their day either meeting with, talking to, or fending off real economy folks who have said similar things to them in the last couple of weeks, that this is either having an impact already or is about to have a big impact. And of course, the impacts of those things are more tangible than the markets, as much as the market declines for not just rich people, but people with 401ks. And I think you're going to see now more of this, because I think people are going to be emboldened by realizing that if you can get the president to understand the real world effects, he's going to still pursue change, but he's going to try to do it in a candy coated shell of a little bit more stability.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I would just add for people who, because I know this is, I got on X and other places. Why is he so upset with Jerome Powell? Look, the Fed has two jobs. One is to try to keep prices low, i.e. inflation down. The other is to keep employment as strong as possible. The issue is that the tariffs are causing is you could get unemployment to spike and inflation to spike all at the same time, in which case the Fed has got a huge problem. Because the traditional lever that you would pull, whichever one you target, is going to make the other worse.
We called that stagflation. We called that stagflation back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. There was also, I think, a prevailing economic view that if you did all this, the dollar would get stronger. They would be forced to cut interest rates. And the problem is that not everyone followed the script, right? And I think that was where the question I sort of think is interesting was did one of his economic advisors send him to believe that there was going to be a different outcome? And now they're realizing that that wasn't it. But I have a feeling that somebody had set him up by saying, when we do all this, here's what's going to happen, and it'll all be great. I'm not sure. I mean, that's my wonder right now.
We know Navarro did that, and there's some people who say Lutnick did that.
Well, and that's my killer question is, does that hurt the standing internally? Because on a lot of other issues, that would have been a huge issue, right? If you look back through Trump, when somebody sends him off a course that doesn't end up right, whether that's a policy or a personnel choice, there are some people who the president still talks about, so and so, they gave me fill in the blank. So
I can tell you that there's the people who are being excluded from meetings. I can't say more right now. I will be able to soon, I believe, but there are people who are being excluded from meetings who were previously very much included in meetings, and we'll have more on that in the coming hours and days. Hey, want to be part of the two-way community all the time? Hit the subscribe button. Great video clips like this, plus conversations like no other, full episodes and more, always available on this channel. You got to hit subscribe to never miss a thing.